Imagine a small town in Alabama, USA. The year is 1960. A boy is born in a place where the pace of life is slow, where people still know their neighbors, and where hard work is not just a choice, it's a way of survival. His name is Timothy Donald Cook, but the world will one day know him simply as Tim Cook, the man who would carry one of the most valuable companies on Earth into the future. But right now, he is just a boy growing up in Robertsdale. His father, Donald, works at a shipyard. His mother, Geraldine, works at a pharmacy. Money is never in excess, but there is always discipline and kindness in the house. Tim is quiet, thoughtful, a kid who observes more than he speaks. Years later, Tim would say, "I learned early that you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to make a difference." That quiet strength would become his superpower. School life is simple, but Tim is always curious. He is fascinated by how things work. He takes apart gadgets, stares at machines, asks questions that most kids don't. Teachers notice something different, not just intelligence, but persistence. Yet, growing up in the South is not easy. The world around him is changing. Civil rights movements, economic shifts, and Tim feels the weight of being different. He knows he doesn't quite fit in, but that doesn't stop him. If anything, it fuels him. When he graduates high school as second in his class, his parents are proud. Tim chooses to study industrial engineering at Auburn University. It is here that his life starts to change. College is tough, but Tim thrives on challenges. He studies late into the night. He asks professors difficult questions, and he slowly builds a reputation as the guy who never settles for good enough. One day, sitting alone in the campus library, he looks at his books and whispers to himself, "If I want to change the world, I have to be ready to work harder than anyone else." And that's exactly what he does. Tim graduates from Auburn University in 1982 with a degree in industrial engineering, a milestone that fills his parents with pride. But for Tim, this is just the beginning. He packs his bags and heads out into the real world, armed with nothing but his education, his work ethic, and an unshakable determination to prove himself. His first job is at IBM. The world of technology in the early 1980s is on the verge of a revolution, and Tim finds himself right in the middle of it. But life at IBM isn't glamorous. He works long hours, crunches numbers, and manages supply chains. He is not in the spotlight, not yet, but he is learning something far more valuable: how complex systems work, how decisions ripple across massive organizations, and how leadership is really about precision and responsibility. There are moments when Tim feels invisible. He isn't the charismatic, outspoken leader that corporate America usually celebrates. He is quiet, calculated, methodical, and sometimes he wonders, will this ever be enough to make me stand out? Then comes a turning point. After a decade at IBM, Tim decides to take a risk. He leaves the stability of Big Blue to join a small computer distributor called Intelligent Electronics. Friends think he's crazy. Why leave a secure job? But Tim has a gut feeling. This move gives him more freedom, more responsibility, and for the first time, a chance to shape a company's operations at a deeper level. But just when things seem to be falling into place, life tests him again. Tim moves to Compaq, one of the world's largest PC makers, to run their supply chain operations. It's a prestigious job, a dream position, And yet, something inside him feels restless. He can sense that the PC industry is becoming crowded, commoditized. He begins to think, there has to be something more, something bigger. One afternoon, while sitting in his office, Tim gets a call that will change his life forever. It's from a little company in Cupertino, California, a company struggling to survive at the time. The company's name, Apple. Tim hesitates. On paper, joining Apple seems like career suicide. Apple's future is uncertain, but his gut whispers to him, this is where you're meant to be. And for Tim Cook, listening to that whisper changes everything. Part 3. The leap that changed everything. The year is 1998. Tim Cook boards a flight to California, his mind racing. The decision wasn't easy. Leaving Compaq, a company at the top of the PC industry, to join Apple, a company that many on Wall Street were calling a sinking ship. When Tim steps into Apple's headquarters for the first time, he can feel the tension in the air. This is not the buzzing energy of a winning team. This is a company fighting for survival. But there is one person who refuses to give up. Steve Jobs. Tim meets Steve for the first time, and the conversation is short but intense. Steve, with his trademark black turtleneck and piercing eyes, doesn't waste time. He looks at Tim and says, we're going to reinvent Apple, but we need someone who can make the impossible happen. Tim listens carefully. He doesn't hear desperation in Steve's voice. He hears conviction. In that moment, something clicks inside him. Later, Tim would recall, my intuition told me joining Apple was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to work for the creative genius of our time. So, he says yes. From day one, Tim dives in headfirst. Apple's supply chain is a mess. Warehouses full of unsold products. Suppliers scattered. Inefficiencies everywhere. Tim rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. He starts shutting down factories, reducing inventory, streamlining production. He takes bold steps that scare even some of Apple's employees. But slowly, the company begins to breathe again. Colleagues start to notice something different about Tim. He is not flashy, not loud, but his decisions are razor sharp. He has the rare ability to see years ahead, to predict what the company will need before anyone else does. Steve Jobs, famously hard to impress, begins to trust him. Tim becomes Steve's quiet right-hand man, the one who keeps Apple's engine running while Steve focuses on design and vision. It is during this period that Apple launches the iMac, then the iPod, and suddenly the world starts paying attention again. Apple is no longer dying. It is roaring back to life. And in the background, Tim Cook is building the invisible backbone that will one day make Apple unstoppable. Part 4. When the torch was passed. Apple is soaring. The iPod has revolutionized music. The iPhone is about to change the world forever. And behind every product launch, every perfect keynote, there is Tim Cook, making sure the gears turn without a single slip. But as Apple climbs higher, a shadow begins to fall over the company. Steve Jobs, the visionary who brought Apple back from the dead, is diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. For Tim, this is not just a professional crisis. It is personal. Steve is more than a boss. He is a mentor, a force of nature, a friend. Watching him fight for his life is painful. But Tim knows one thing: the company must not stop. Steve's vision must continue, no matter what. In 2009, During one of Steve's medical leaves, Tim quietly steps into the CEO role for the first time. The world barely notices, but inside Apple, Tim proves that he can steer the ship through stormy waters. He keeps operations smooth, products shipping on time, morale high. Then, in 2011, Steve Jobs calls Tim into his office. The room is quiet. Steve, thinner now, but still with fire in his eyes, looks at Tim and says something that will stay with him forever. "Tim, I've seen many people in my life, but you're the one who can keep Apple true to itself. Don't ask what I would do. Just do what's right." A few weeks later, Steve Jobs resigns as CEO and names Tim Cook his successor. It is one of the most emotional moments in Apple's history. On October 5th, 2011, Steve Jobs passes away. The world mourns. Millions gather outside Apple stores, leaving flowers, notes, and candles. And inside Apple, Tim sits quietly in his office, carrying the weight of something almost unimaginable: the future of the company, the hopes of millions, and the legacy of a man he deeply admired. People wonder, can a quiet, operations-focused man fill the shoes of one of the greatest visionaries in history? Tim doesn't speak much. He doesn't make bold promises. He simply gets back to work because he knows this is the moment he was preparing for his entire life. Part 5. The Quiet Revolution. The world is watching. Apple has lost its legendary leader, and everyone is wondering if the magic will fade. Headlines question Tim Cook's ability to innovate. Critics whisper, he's just an operations guy. Can he really lead Apple into the future? Tim doesn't answer with words. He answers with action. His first major keynote as CEO is quiet, measured, and focused. He doesn't try to imitate Steve Jobs. He doesn't wear the charisma like a costume. Instead, he stays true to himself, calm, precise, thoughtful. Under Tim's leadership, Apple launches the iPhone 5, then the iPhone 6 devices that break sales records worldwide. The Apple Watch debuts, creating a whole new category of wearable tech. Services like Apple Music, Apple Pay, and iCloud grow into billion-dollar businesses. But perhaps Tim's biggest contribution isn't a single product. It's the way he transforms Apple's identity. Tim makes Apple more open, more human. He champions environmental sustainability, making Apple's operations run on 100% renewable energy. He pushes for diversity and inclusion, telling the world that innovation comes from bringing different voices to the table. And then, in a rare and powerful move, Tim Cook publicly comes out as gay, becoming the first openly gay CEO of a Fortune 500 company. If hearing that the CEO of Apple is gay can help someone struggling to come to terms with who they are, he says, then it's worth the trade-off with my privacy. It's a moment that shows Tim's courage. He is not just leading Apple's business. He is leading by example, proving that leadership is about authenticity. Financially, Apple becomes unstoppable. Under Tim's watch, Apple crosses the $1 trillion market cap in 2018 and later $2 trillion, then $3 trillion, making it the most valuable company in the world. Yet, despite the staggering numbers, Tim stays grounded. He rides his bike, keeps a simple routine, and focuses on what matters: people, values, and the future of technology. For Tim Cook, this is not about being a rock star CEO. It's about building a company that outlives all of them. A company that keeps changing lives long after they're gone. Part 6. The Legacy of a Quiet Leader. Today, Tim Cook stands at the helm of a company that shapes the way billions of people live, work, and connect. But when you look past the charts, the keynote stages, and the headlines, you see something else. A man who never let fame change him. He still wakes up before dawn. He still sends emails at 4:30 in the morning. He still believes that discipline and humility are not just habits, but tools for greatness. When asked about Steve Jobs, Tim often says, "Steve was unoriginal. There will never be another Steve. My job was never to be him. My job was to be the best version of myself." And that's exactly what he did. Tim's leadership is not loud, but it is deeply felt. He has guided Apple through global crises, supply chain disruptions, and even a pandemic, all while keeping its heartbeat steady. He has proven that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be the strongest. Perhaps the most powerful part of Tim's journey is the lesson it teaches. You don't have to fit the mold to make history. Tim was never the stereotypical CEO. He wasn't the visionary showman like Steve. He wasn't the charismatic marketer. He was the calm in the storm, the man behind the curtain who made sure everything worked, until one day he stepped out from the shadows and showed the world that quiet leadership can be just as revolutionary. If Tim Cook's story tells us anything, it's this. Greatness isn't about being the loudest or the flashiest. It's about staying true to your values, trusting your gut when the world doubts you, and putting in the work day after day, even when no one is watching. As the camera fades out, imagine Tim Cook walking down the halls of Apple Park, the futuristic campus he helped build. His face is calm, his pace steady, and somewhere in the distance, you can almost hear Steve Jobs' words echoing, "Just do what's right." And that's what Tim Cook has been doing, quietly, powerfully, relentlessly, changing the world one decision at a time. Part 7. Beyond the boardroom. The cameras may show Tim Cook as the CEO of the world's most valuable company, but beyond the boardroom, he is still the quiet kid from Robertsdale, Alabama. The man who grew up in a small town hasn't forgotten where he came from. When Tim speaks to young graduates at commencements, his words are simple but carry weight. He often says, "Your life should be about more than just building a career. It should be about building a life that has meaning." He talks about the nights he stayed awake wondering if leaving Compaq for Apple was a mistake, the moments of doubt when critics said Apple would never innovate without Steve Jobs, the times he sat alone at his desk, asking himself if he could carry the weight of Steve's legacy, and then he smiles, because those moments of fear were the very moments that shaped him. Tim has also become a voice for responsibility in tech. He pushes for privacy protections, warning the world that personal data should not be sold or exploited. He advocates for ethical manufacturing and stands up for human rights globally. Technology should serve humanity, he says, not the other way around. Even with all this power, Tim keeps his life remarkably simple. He loves hiking, cycling, and spending quiet evenings reading. Friends say he is humble to a fault, never seeking the spotlight unless he has something meaningful to say. And perhaps that is Tim Cook's greatest message. You don't need to change who you are to change the world. You just need to have the courage to follow your compass, even when the road ahead is lonely. As the story closes, picture Tim standing in Apple Park at sunset. The glass walls of the spaceship-like building reflect the warm glow of the sky. He takes a deep breath, as if reminding himself there's still more work to do, more lives to touch, more futures to build. And then he walks forward, calmly, purposefully, because for Tim Cook, the journey never really ends. It just keeps evolving. Part 8. Lessons from a life of quiet strength. Tim Cook's story is more than just a tale of business success. It is a story about patience, resilience, and the power of staying true to yourself. From a small town in Alabama to the helm of the world's most valuable company, Tim's journey reminds us that greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, quietly, steadily, persistently. He teaches us that setbacks are not the end of the story. Every challenge, every failure, every moment of doubt can become a stepping stone if we refuse to give in to fear. Tim once said, "You must find what fuels you and run with it, even when the path seems impossible." That philosophy carried him through every twist and turn of his career. Tim also shows us the power of integrity. He didn't try to mimic Steve Jobs, nor did he compromise his values for fame or fortune. He led with honesty, humility, and a commitment to doing what is right, whether it was protecting user privacy, championing sustainability, or advocating for human rights. Leadership, he proves, is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most dependable one. And perhaps most importantly, Tim Cook's story is a lesson in courage. It takes courage to step into Steve Jobs' shoes, to make bold decisions under scrutiny, to publicly live your truth in a world full of judgment. But it also takes courage to remain consistent, patient, and disciplined when no one is watching. As you watch his life unfold, one thing becomes clear. Your journey doesn't have to be flashy to be extraordinary. Your actions, your decisions, and your dedication define your legacy far more than applause or headlines ever will. So, take a page from Tim Cook's story. Embrace the quiet strength within you. Face your challenges with resilience. Lead with integrity. And never underestimate the power of consistent, patient effort, because that is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary impact. Part 9. The man behind the vision. Most people see Tim Cook as the CEO of Apple, the man steering one of the most valuable companies in history. But step behind the headlines, and you'll find a man defined not by numbers, but by character. A man who measures success not in market caps or product launches, but in impact, integrity, and the lives he touches. Tim's mornings still start early. He rises before dawn, not for glory, but for focus. In the quiet hours, he reflects on what matters, not emails or meetings, but values, purpose, and responsibility. He often tells his team, if you lose sight of what matters most, success loses its meaning. Family and friendship have always been central to him. Though intensely private, Tim never forgets the lessons of his youth: humility, honesty, and hard work. Friends recall his rare but meaningful moments of humor, the way he listens intently, and the respect he shows to everyone, from interns to executives. Leadership for him is not a title. It is a practice of empathy and consistency. And then there's courage, quiet, steadfast courage. Coming out as the first openly gay Fortune 500 CEO was not a publicity move. It was a message. Authenticity matters. Your life can be bigger if you stop hiding, he said. And in saying it, he inspired countless people to embrace who they are. Even in the face of fear, technology is Tim's canvas, but humanity is his measure. Every product launch, every innovation, is guided by one principle. It must serve people, not just profit. Privacy, sustainability, accessibility. These are not afterthoughts. They are core to his vision. Perhaps what makes Tim Cook remarkable is that he reminds us that greatness doesn't require theatrics. It doesn't require loud speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it requires the quiet, steady persistence of a man willing to do what is right, even when the world doubts him, even when the spotlight is elsewhere. As the sun sets over Apple Park, Tim walks the paths he helped shape, the glass walls glowing softly in the evening light. One can almost hear him whisper to himself, "Stay true, work hard, lead with integrity." And in that quiet determination, we see not just a CEO, but a man whose life is a testament to the power of vision, guided by character, a lesson that transcends business, technology, and time itself. Part 10. The Blueprint for Greatness. Every story has an ending, but some endings are really beginnings in disguise. Tim Cook's journey is one of those stories, a blueprint for anyone striving to leave a mark on the world. From the quiet streets of Robertsdale, Alabama, to the towering glass walls of Apple Park, his life is proof that patience, integrity, and courage can create extraordinary impact. Tim never sought the spotlight. He never needed applause. What he sought was purpose, and purpose, he learned, is forged in the small, consistent decisions you make every day. The emails sent before dawn, the factories reorganized quietly, the employees empowered behind the scenes. He teaches us that leadership is not about imitating others, but about embracing who you are. Tim didn't try to be Steve Jobs. He was Tim Cook. And by being himself, he built a legacy that is bigger than any product, bigger than any headline. He turned Apple into a symbol not just of innovation, but of responsibility, ethics, and humanity. His story also reminds us that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, deliberate, and unwavering. Coming out publicly, standing up for privacy, protecting the planet. These were acts of courage that reshaped expectations, proving that doing the right thing can be as powerful as any innovation. But perhaps the most powerful lesson is this: greatness is not reserved for the extraordinary. It is available to anyone willing to stay disciplined, stay humble, and work relentlessly toward a vision that serves others. Tim Cook shows us that being consistent, patient, and authentic is often more transformative than any grand gesture. As we watched him walk through Apple Park one last time in our story, the sun setting behind him, the spaceship-like campus glowing softly, we realize that his life is a message. You don't have to be loud, flashy, or dramatic to change the world. You just need quiet strength, clear values, and the courage to act. And so, his journey leaves us inspired, challenged, and ready to embrace our own quiet strength, to act with purpose, to lead with integrity, and to know that the greatest impact often comes not from the spotlight, but from the dedication and courage we carry every single day. Tim Cook didn't just build a company. He built a legacy and a blueprint for greatness that will guide generations to come.